tiny bit more on the jog. Zero. Tiny bit more. I got greedy earlier and put too much on, and on my practice go I snapped the end of my tool off, which is why I'm taking it really quite easily at the moment. Bit of that can't help hurt. The reason I'm going quite so far away from the thread rather than just to the end, because it's quite time consuming, is because of all the backlash in the drive mechanism. Is by the time it's travelled a few turns that way, it's all up against the same position it was the last time it travelled up, just to make it a bit more repeatable. And there, I don't know if the camera's showing it up, but the groove is landing smack on every time, which is good. So where were we? Ah yes, 0. Chink. A tiny bit more. So I'm using the cross slide to bring it back into the same position every time at 0. And then I'm using this slide to move it in, move the bit in. This is set to 30 degrees because 30 degrees is the angle of the thread being metric. So the bit is coming in at 30 degrees on the 60 degree point, which means it's cutting on one face of the bit, not as you can't just plunge the V straight in, the V cutter, because the force of it cutting on both sides will be much higher, and you probably snap the very fine point off. At least that's what I'm doing. The reason I'm retracting the bit away from the work is so as the bit clears the thread I've cut, because even though it's it's quite a nice lathe, there's still backlash in it, and when it moves the bed back that way, it has to take up the slop and the backlash. The bit no longer lines up with the groove because it's on the other half of, or the other side of, the backlash or free play, and that's enough to snap the end right off the bit. And I know that because I did that earlier on practicing, so that's why I do that. Zero. A tiny bit more. Had I done my maths, I'd know how far to wind this in because I'd be able to look it up on the scale, but I haven't. So I'm going to have to wind it in until I measure it with a micrometer, or just put the nut on. It worked on the practice ones, so that's what I'm going to do again. The other thing I've done, and I've always noticed it on lathe cut threads, is there's a reduced shoulder or shank or whatever you want to call it after you've got the threaded part, and then there's a kind of a recess just in there where my fingernail is, and I've always wondered why they've done that. I thought maybe when they were cutting this edge they weren't too, they were a bit sloppy and cut too far, whereas what it is that diameter in there is fractionally lower than the bottom part of where the thread is cut, and that is I can't find my test bit now. Anyway, so that's, I mean, if you were to cut and then just stop, then the groove that the bit is in would just finish, which means when you come up a second time and a third and a fourth time, you'd never get the lathe to stop right at the end where the previous one stopped, and then if you overshot that flat end would hit the very pointy delicate bit and snap the end off. So if you put a reduced shank here or reduced diameter, then the bit cuts right off into free air, and then you can take the next pass, so it doesn't have that problem of coming up against the previous cut. So where were we? Retracted 0. A little bit more. Oops, a bit further. It's a bit sticky, that. Tiny bit more, 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 tiny bit more. Are we there yet? Is that the child in the back of the car? Ooh, almost. Where are we? Retract. 0. A little bit more. The reason I'm retracting with the spindle motor rather than disengage, move the bed back and re-engage is because the main gearbox and gear train in this lathe is, even though it's a modern lathe, is Imperial. I think they're mostly, even though it's a Chinese lathe, I think it's mostly an American market, or something like that. Which means when you got it set to, when you got the gears, the what's-it gears for metric on the main drive, and you set the gearbox, the lead screw is no longer spinning at whole multiples of the pitch as it would with an Imperial. It'll always go up to an inch or whatever. Which means if I disengage the half nut from here and then rotate it, I'd never line it up because the ratios are just so bizarrely apart. So I have to retract and bring it in without disengaging the nut through the entire process. I did. I'm trying to remember if I brought that in. Yes, I did. If not, it won't cut. Which is better than guessing I haven't and put it in again, and then if I have, it'll smash the end of the bit off. Oh, look at that. That's only gone halfway before going tight. So what I'm going to do is do another pass. There's a bit of burr, not a lot. I think one more pass. Zero. I'll always bring it up to 0 going the same direction, because if you overshoot and go back, again you're on the backlash, which means you're in the wrong place. So bring it up to 0, always in the same direction. Tiny bit more. And of course it's cutting, because I'm coming in at this angle, it's cutting on the full depth of the thread, so it's more critical now than it was at the beginning. Are we there yet? I think. What do you reckon? I think a half what I have been taking off. Yes, one more at half what I've been taking off. So, hopefully for a final time. 0. Half what I've been taking before. Squirt. The other reason I'm checking the nut with the tool wound in is because it fits. I'd have to retract it all the way out to here if I wanted to get the nut. Oh, that's more like it. That's free up until it hits the nylock insert, so it won't go anymore. And that is why I bought a thread cutting lathe of reasonable quality. So look at that. Perfect. I'll wire brush it just to get a bit of the shmoo off. And yeah. Friday night's worth of entertainment. That's better than sitting in the pub drinking beer. Talking about your project when you should be in the shed making it. Should be a quite list of beer. Costs £3.50. That's about a pint. The steel costs a tenner. The 2 pint a packet of crisps. Bit of tool steel I got with the lathe, free. And I have made half a spindle for the secret project. Half a spindle for the headstock. The next stage is to cut the metric even finer. So that's about 25mm, the big one. 25mm metric, fine, 1mm pitch. So that's going to be tomorrow's job.